the basic economics really matter. And they matter because, not that it's bad that rich people are getting richer, it's bad that everyone else is getting poorer. And it's especially bad that young people can't afford homes. Let me just put a very precise point on this. If you want a measure of how your economy is doing, I personally favor eliminating GDP as a measure. I don't even know what that is. It's clearly not relevant. They tell me Japan has a stagnant GDP. Have you been to Tokyo? It's the single most radicalizing experience you'll ever have because it's just so nice. You lost the war? Really? Can we lose a war and wind up like this? GDP. No. I don't know what even that is. The total economic activity. Oh, no. My measure is really simple. I got a bunch of kids. Can they afford houses with full-time jobs at like 27, 28? And the answer is no way. And the answer is that 35-year-olds with really good jobs can't afford a house unless they stretch and go deep into debt. And I just think that's a total disaster.
So two things. I think, yes, you can. You might not live in Los Angeles or Manhattan, but there are plenty of places throughout the United States where you could still buy a house for under $250,000.
I agree.
So you could do that. And then also, if you flipped this and like, why do they have to spend $50,000 to go to college? Why is college so expensive? You would have a completely different reaction. Yeah. I would honestly, in this part, just ask, why do you need to own a home right now? I think renting is a cheaper, better choice right now. And I think living with roommates is one of the most underrated things to do right now to get ahead of it.
All right, so
I
let me
don't
just
think you
push
need to
back.
buy a house right now. Yeah,
and it's not that I disagree, but let's stay within that comment. So let's talk about a 27, 28-year-old couple. They both have jobs, and they want to get a family started. You're telling them rent for how long?
Until it makes sense to buy a house, and then I'd figure out where they want to live.
Right. Well, Graham, my job, our career, they've got us in a metropolitan area. I can go out, but I don't want to drive 90 minutes each way. What do you say to that?
I would look at the cost of buying. Usually in those areas, the break-even point of buying versus renting at like 20-something years. And you could even, what's great is that there's something called the New York Times buy versus rent calculator that you could go through and type in different metrics to see where the break-even point is. And in a lot of those cities where you would have a 90-minute commute, it could be 25 to 30 years just before buying a home breaks even to that of renting. The only thing it really comes down to is if you're going to consistently invest the difference. The benefit of buying is you lock in your cost, and it's almost like a forced savings where you're going to be paying into it. But I think a lot of people miscalculate, especially now with interest rates at 7%. What are going to be their property taxes, repairs, insurance? What is going to be the demand of this house over the next 10 to 20 years? And are more people becoming remote? And I would argue that more jobs over the next 20 years will be remote to the point where you don't have to live in the big city, or that other areas that are currently not desirable will be a great area to live. It might not be right now, but look at all the people who bought into like Santa Monica 50 years ago. Like that was not a expensive area back then. It was like a hippie town. And now look at it. I just think that is going to apply to other areas throughout the country that right now people just don't expect are going to be great areas to live.
We'll get you right back to our conversation, but I want to make sure that when you're chasing your dreams, that you don't let bad sleep hold you back. Avocado Green Mattress has customizable options based on your sleep style. And they make their mattresses with certified organic materials for clean, breathable comfort that helps you stay cooler and sleep deeper throughout the night, so that when you wake up, you're rested and you can show up ready to win the day. Head to avocadogreenmattress.com/Ken and take an extra $50 off the sale price with the code KEN50. Avocado. Dream of better.
I just think that was a bit of an oversimplification.
Of course.
Of an argument. And he's kind of saying what it should be. And Graham's kind of coming at it from an angle of like what it is and what you should do about it.
Right.
And so they're kind of like talking on different levels. So I guess like I could kind of address what he's saying there if I honestly had a little bit of a better understanding of what it is exactly.
Well, he's simply saying, should we be measuring, the economic success of our country if people in their 20s, late 20s can buy a house? And Graham makes a correct point. You can buy a house. It might be a $180,000 house. 45 minutes out of a metropolitan area, a more rural area. But I think you made a greater point, and it needs to be said more, and I applaud you for it. What it would be nice to see Tucker say as a part of that would have been, but let's take on the student loan crisis. When did the federal government get into the banking business?
And they're in the mortgage business too.
They're in the mortgage business as well, but they're making money on the backs of families on student loans. And when they got into student loan business in the 60s, Fannie and Sally and all them, the Mays, it's a racket. And you make a great point. If these young people didn't have 100 to 150 to 200,000 in student loans, they could in fact save up and buy a house and do it affordably. That's the key point. And I'm glad you raised that. But I think it is possible, but we've got to set expectations for young people too, to go, hey, my first house isn't going to be what I grew up in necessarily, because the economics have changed. But I do want to give you guys a final say on this. Do you feel like there is a reset coming? I'm just wanting to know what you think about real estate. Do you worry about a reset?
We were talking to Dave earlier about this, that he said, when I brought up the whole, it's better to rent. Dave's point was, it might be better to rent now, but long term, the trend is usually flipped towards buying something. So what might be true today might not be true 10 years from now. And he says, well, eventually we're going to return back to a normal where buying a home long term is going to be a good financial decision for most people. I tend to agree, but that would mean that either rents would have to go up or housing prices would have to go down. Something has to happen to balance the two out. But people locking in 2% mortgages for 30 years is screwing things up, because they're able to rent out their house for so much less than the person who's buying today at 7%. Like, you could have identical homes side by side. One person, their monthly overhead is $7,000 a month. The other person spends $4,000 a month. Well, if you could only get $4,500 for rent, one's going to be losing money, the other's going to be profiting. So I think these 30-year mortgages at 2% really screwed up the market. And either you bring rates back down just to level the playing field, but then you risk inflating asset prices again.
Correct.
Or something's got to happen eventually, but it could be 20 years from now. I have no idea.
Yeah. If you enjoyed this video, click here for our full conversation.